guys, it's Kelly Lativola here, and I am back with another video. We are currently kicking off the release for December of 2016. Today I'm going to be using the Friends for All Seasons set Winter, the Whimsy Alpha set, and then the Bold Banner Greetings. We're just going to use a little one from there. So when I saw these little foxes, they're totally adorable, and they have their little hands out to hold like the balloons that are included. And so I really wanted to make them hold something, and I thought them holding up some letters would be adorable. So I'm going to draw myself a little line here just to get my stamping straight so that my letters were straight, but also so it made sense where my foxes were. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, I don't know, my head is in this video a lot, my apologies. I was apparently very particular about where I was stamping, much more than usual, because normally you don't see my head in there. So I'm stamping them and masking them as I go because I'm going to be doing a distress ink background. So I'm going to stamp my little foxes down, and then I have always, when you're stamping things that are letters, you're creating your own words, and I just love these little Whimsy Alphas. I think they're super cute, but I really like outline stamps, and so I wanted everything to flow, and I wanted them to be outlined. So I'm going to stamp them in little piggy ink because I knew I want them to be pink. And to make my letters line up and the spacing to be even, I'm going to stamp my first letter and my last letter. And I forgot to erase that pencil mark that I had made one earlier, and it was too high up. And I forgot to erase it. And once you put this ink over pencil, you are never getting it up. So make sure you erase first. So I'm stamping my first and my last letter so that I can get that stamp or the spacing correct. And then this particular O is solid, which I think is super cute and kind of modern, but it wasn't what I wanted for this because I wanted the outline. So here, this is me outlining them. I have just a T-square ruler, and I'm just going to line them up on each edge. I'm using a Copic Safe marker to just add that black outline. I do think that they're super pretty by themselves, but this is just another way that you can use them to make them work for whatever you're doing. I have a tendency to just move in one direction, outlining as much as I can, and then I'll flip it so I can do the other direction. And that just works out best for me, but you can do it however works for you. Once I was done outlining all of the stamps, I went ahead and masked them, and then stamped down some balloons in the background. I was really thinking more Valentine. I mean, I know we're in the middle of Christmas, but I think this is a super cute kind of like Valentine's Day set, and so I was thinking more along those lines. I didn't bother masking the balloons because I knew that my Copic coloring was going to cover them, and it was one less thing I had to cut out. I wanted to do a super soft background, and so I'm using tumbled glass, picked raspberry, and scattered straw. The picked raspberry can be very, very strong if you're not careful, so just use a light hand if you're trying to use that with some of the lighter colors. Once I was happy with the blending of the blue, I went to the scattered straw, and the reason I did this is because I find that when you're blending a color in the middle, it's easier to leave the white stripe. I get better blending. You might not have this problem, but I get better blending if I leave that little stripe and then go back in and blend the pink into the blue as well as the yellow at the same time. And I did remove the masks for the love because I didn't think it mattered. So I told you before I wanted there to be a little outline because W+9 inks are alcohol based. You can use a colorless blender on them or Copic color over them, and they work really nicely together. So I just drew myself a little circle in the middle of the love and used the colorless blender to remove that little piggy ink, and it worked perfectly, and I had no issues, so I was super happy with that. We're going to color the letters as if they were a gradient. So I'm going to fill it in. This it's R02 is almost a perfect match for that little piggy ink. So those worked really well together. And then I'm going to do the darkest shading at the bottom, and I'm just using a light hand and doing some flicking so that they are blending into each other all the way down to the darkest color. And then from the darkest color, I'll blend back up to the lightest just so I know that I have a good blend. That might not be necessary in these small, not that they're small, they're large letters, but sometimes they're thin, and so in that small space you might not need as to do the blending twice, but I'm just in the habit of it. So I went ahead and blended all of those out, and now we're going to move on to the coloring of the foxes. So I was a little apprehensive about this because I picked really bright pink colors, and I didn't know how that was going to fare with the traditional reds of a fox. But actually, it ended up working out fine, so yay. For his face, I am doing an E11, which is, it looks kind of peachy, and I actually do use this for my skin tones, but it's just to kind of lay down the shadows and put in the whiter parts of his face. And then I went from the E11 to the E13, and I only added very little of that to the whitest parts of his body, so his belly and his face. I just added a little bit, and then I'm going to go back later and blend that with a warm gray. So I'm just going through and filling in my shadows. I have a tendency to do that. I like to leave a lot of white area when I'm going through the first time. And this is just because I've learned from myself that I tend to be a bit heavy-handed when I either start with my darkest colors or I'm only doing it one time and I'm trying to get everything just completely covered in one fell swoop. I am just I'm super heavy-handed, and I've never been able to break that habit. So this is a way for me to kind of cure myself of that by doing just the shadows first and then blending out to the rest of the whole body. So because his tail would fall behind, there would be shadows there. I added some shadows where his nose would be, on the inside of his legs would be a little bit darker. And then also I was trying to give him a little bit more of a neck. So I added some shadows in there as well. I just wanted there to be a delineation between his head and his body. So that's why I was adding that those shadows there. The majority of his body is going to be that E13. I'm just going to go ahead and color that all in. And I really like when I'm using, or when I have two images that are the same in a card, I really like coloring one lighter and one darker just to kind of differentiate between the two. And that is what I did here. So the one on the left hand side, I did color him a little bit darker, and I went all the way out to the E18, E19. This is that one, it's a warm gray, it's the number 1, W1, and I'm just flicking that over his belly to blend those out. And then I used the darkest color, which is E17 on this particular fox, to color in his little feet and then darken up those shadows. I felt like they got a little bit light as I went over with my lightest color. So like I said, the one on the left, I colored him the same way, but I did color him a little bit darker using that E19. And then I wanted to bring in some purple. So, you know, sometimes when you're picking color combinations, you want things that are going to be complementary, but I also knew that I wanted something that was going to cover up that blue in my balloons. So I went with the purple. I thought, you know, the hot pink, the purple, and blue would be pretty together. So here for the shadows, I'm adding it where the scarf wraps around. For the scarf piece that is on top, I'm really only adding shading just to the center, and I'm leaving a highlight on each edge. This is going to help differentiate it from the scarf that's wrapped around his neck. And then the piece that's underneath, as well as the piece that's to the right, where it's like really in the crease of his arm, those are going to be much darker. There's not going to be really much of a highlight on those at all. So I colored the first balloon, and I didn't love the way it came out, so I didn't leave that in the video. I wanted to show you the right way to color it. So here I'm filling it all in with the lightest color, but I'm just leaving myself a little bit of highlight, and then I'm adding in the darker colors, but leaving a lighter edge on the left-hand side. This is just going to be what other artists refer to as like bounced light. I'm really just trying to give it the look of some transparency. I did go darker with these balloons than I normally do, but I think it came out okay, and it's good to try new things and something that's different. So I'm just adding the darkest color in just a couple of different places, especially where the balloon is gathered at the bottom. They would definitely be darker there. And I really wanted that white highlight to stand out, so that's why I added so much shading to the left-hand side of it. I'm going to go over it with my lightest color, and that white highlight seemed just a little too white, so I did go back in and kind of adjust that. You don't have to be married to it. If you don't like the way that it's coming out, keep toying with it until you are happy with it. I picked some pretty bright blues to do the other two balloons, and then I am coloring over that purple balloon because balloons are transparent, and so you would be able to see one color shining through the other, and it would create like a blue violet. That's going to give it some dimension, some look of realism that they are in fact transparent balloons. But I'm coloring this one the same way, leaving that highlight on the right hand side, really just adding the darkest shading where the balloon is gathered and then next to the highlight, and leaving that lightest edge on the left hand side so that there would be just a little bit of something to differentiate it. And I'm going to color the other balloon the same exact way. Once all of the main coloring is done, I'm going to do a shadow. So I have the C5, the C3, and the C1. These are usually my go-tos for shadows. And at first I thought, well, I was going to color them as if they were like up in the air, like the balloons were floating. And I didn't really like the way that was working out. So I decided to put some ground underneath them eventually. But this is just going to help it kind of pop off that background. And I always do mine where my light source is in the top right, so my shadows will be to the bottom left. That's how I'm coloring this one as well. And then blending it out lastly with the C1, so everything is good and blended but still has lots of dimension. And then, like I said, I really wanted to ground them. I felt like they just looked like they were floating and it didn't really make a ton of sense. So I'm using those same C markers to just put some ground underneath them, just a few little lines, little flicks of color, so that they have something that they are standing on. I didn't use a ton of the C5, just a little bit, and blended those out with the C3, and then the most color will be with the C1. I'll fill in between their legs and then also just blend out the stuff that's on the ground. And that just, it just felt much, it made the image feel, I guess, just much more, like it made more sense. I just felt like it made more sense that way. So here I'm using a white gel pen to add in some details. I'm doing polka dots on his little scarf, and then I'm also going to add a white highlight on the letters. This is going to make them look like they're shiny or like they're balloons themselves. Just a fun way to get a little bit more out of your letters by putting that little highlight there. It really makes them, with the combination of that and the shadow, it makes them appear really 3D. And then on the balloons, I'm going to add the white highlight where I had left it, just to kind of emphasize that. Once all of that is done, I just like a bold outline. I just do. I've said that like 3 times. If you watch my videos, it's not the first time you've heard it. So I outline all of my images, and that's what I am doing here. Just going back over, really making that outline show up. I picked a couple of W+9 inks that worked with the colors I picked. So I have Hayride, Sea Breeze, and Shell Pink. And I have these little teeny tiny hearts that are from the Friends for All Seasons winter set. And I am like fake masking here. So I just have a Post-it and I'm picking up the ink and just moving the mask around. So that made the background just a little bit more interesting. Sometimes I stamp off one time and then stamp it onto the paper just so that the impression is a little bit lighter, where maybe there isn't as much shading with the Distress ink. And I did that for all 3 colors. Here, to make the sentiment, the rest of it, that bold Banners Greetings has a "That's You," and so I really loved the script "You," so I masked off the "that's" and just stamped the "You." And then no card is complete without shimmer, so we're going to use some clear Wink of shimmer on the letters and on the balloons to make them all pretty and shimmery, and then that's the entire card. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.